Welcome to the Stopping to Think podcast. I am your host, Will Dole. Thank you for listening. If you enjoy, you can rate and review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. Today, I have a couple of short book reviews. The first is Redwall, Mossflower by Brian Jacques. I assume that's how you pronounce his last name. British author from the previous century. It's a French-looking name to me, and I have no idea how to pronounce it, to be honest with you. Jaques, if you're looking it up on Amazon. Discovering his book series Redwall via the old TV show being available on Canon Plus, and the kids seeing it and watching it and enjoying it. And then we found out, oh, it's a book series. This has been one of the best things to happen to our family in the past year. This book, Redwall Mossflower, is a prequel to the original Redwall book, which we also very much enjoyed. And some of my comments here are going to be reflecting on what we've read of the series so far, not just this particular book. But in this prequel to the original Redwall, we find the origin story of Martin the Warrior, who must face down Sarmina the Wildcat Queen and bring an end to her reign of terror. Jacques creates endearing characters. Andy, my wife, is particularly fond of the moles, whose language is very fun to speak, and my boys particularly like to speak in Molish. I have a hard time understanding it when they do so, but they think it's great fun. He also writes in a compelling narrative style. Though you are confident that the good guys will win, it nonetheless feels tenuous and up in the air throughout. Like, what's going to happen next? How is good going to come of this? In that sense, it's very real to life. As a Christian, we can have great confidence that things will work out in the end. We know how the story ends, and yet often in life we feel the tension of how will this particular thing work out for good? I don't know. I don't know how it will. As a father who cares about the literacy of my children, I also appreciate that Jacques refuses to write down to children. He uses a broad vocabulary in a way that feels natural and not pretentious. And he also handles difficult scenarios, great wrongdoing, death, etc., in a manner that is factual, like true to life, without being gratuitous. So we're looking forward to continuing to read in this series. A lot of fun. Highly recommend Redwall to you. Second book is To the Church in Rome by Douglas Wilson. It's a collection of edited sermons on Paul's longest and most famous letter. Wilson does a good job of pressing into present application. If you know anything of Douglas Wilson's writing, you're going to be pretty familiar with that. He has a heavy focus on application. He'll often lambast the tendency of many sermons in his own theological circle, broader reformdom, for circling up in the sky and never landing down in real life. And he doesn't do that. He doesn't allow the theology of this densely theological letter to float around up in the air, but he presses it into the corners and crevices of real life the way the Apostle Paul clearly intended for it to be read and understood and applied. And he's coming, again, from a clearly reformed perspective. I thought he did an excellent job of explaining the meat of the gospel in chapters 1 through 8. His glorying in the wisdom of God in chapter 11 was soul-stirring. The excursus in chapter 13 about what submission to governing authorities really means was a pretty mixed bag. I have some sympathy with some of what he says, and some of it I thought, you're kind of doing some special pleading here, trying to get around what Paul is pretty clearly saying. But in chapter 13 and verse 8, the verse, "Owe no one anything," I thought his work there was very good. Also, the section in chapter 14 on the passage related to the weaker brother and how we should understand who is the weaker brother. It's the one with the, in our modern parlance, we might say stronger conscience, but it's actually a weaker conscience. If you're restricted from doing more things without it harming your conscience, that's a weak conscience, biblically speaking. But how should Christians relate to one another in those circumstances? You show deference to the one whose conscience is weaker. You don't flaunt your freedom. You don't use it as a way to harm the one for whom Christ died. I thought Wilson handled that very well. There's nothing mind-blowing or new in this exposition of Romans, but it was a solid exposition of Romans, which was helpful to me. I'm just kind of letting my mind sit in Romans and planning to start preaching it here about half, 3/4 of a year from now. And so I just kind of want to get in that headspace. So listening to this collection of sermons was very helpful, encouraging way to finish my book listening in 2025. So I would commend this book to you if you are interested in the book of Romans. This has been the Stopping to Think podcast. I am your host, Will Dole. Thank you for listening.